The morning Oliver Jenkins found his wife dead in their bed, 3 newborn babies wailing in the cradle beside her, was the day his heart split clean in two. It was March of 1878 in Pahrump, Nevada, and the desert winds howled outside as if mourning alongside him. Catherine had survived the birth of their triplets just 5 days prior. 3 tiny boys she had named Samuel, Matthew, and Benjamin before the fever took her in the night. Oliver had woken to silence where her breathing should have been, and for a long moment he could not move, could not think, could only stare at her peaceful face and wonder how God could be so cruel as to give him everything and take it away in the same breath. The funeral was small. Their ranch sat 10 miles outside town, and Catherine had been a quiet woman who kept mostly to herself. The minister spoke words Oliver did not hear. His mother-in-law wept. His ranch hands stood awkward and uncomfortable in their Sunday clothes, and through it all, the babies cried. They cried as the coffin was lowered into the hard desert ground. They cried as neighbors brought food Oliver could not eat. They cried through the night as he paced the floor, trying to remember how Catherine had held them, how she had soothed them in those precious few days before she left him. By the 3rd night alone, Oliver stood in the nursery Catherine had prepared with such joy, holding all 3 babies at once because he could not bear to let any of them cry unattended. His arms shook with exhaustion. His eyes burned. The ranch work was piling up outside, and he had not slept more than an hour at a time since Catherine passed. He was 32 years old, a man who could break horses and mend fences and face down rustlers without flinching, and 3 infants had brought him to his knees. "You need help," his foreman Pete said the next morning, finding Oliver asleep at the kitchen table with a baby in each arm and one in a basket at his feet. "Real help, not just the neighbor women bringing meals." "I can manage," Oliver said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You cannot," Pete said bluntly. He was an older man, weathered and honest. "Those boys need someone who knows what they are doing, and you need to keep this ranch running or you will have nothing to feed them with come winter." Oliver looked down at Samuel, or maybe it was Matthew. He could barely tell them apart yet. "What do you suggest?" "Put an advertisement in the paper. Hire a nanny. Someone who can live here and tend to them proper." The word nanny sounded foreign and fancy, something for rich folks back east, but Oliver was desperate enough to try anything. That afternoon, he rode into Pahrump and placed an advertisement at the newspaper office. "Widower rancher seeks experienced woman to care for infant triplets. Room and board provided, plus wages. Must be willing to live on remote property. 3 weeks passed. Oliver survived on the kindness of neighbor women who took turns coming out to the ranch, showing him how to prepare bottles, how to change diapers, how to burp babies and recognize the different types of cries. He learned, but he was clumsy at it, and every time he looked at his sons, he saw Catherine's eyes staring back at him and felt the loss like a fresh wound. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, a wagon came rattling up the long drive to the ranch house. Oliver was in the barn, trying to fix a broken stall door while keeping one eye on the house where the babies napped. He heard the wagon and walked out, squinting against the bright sun. A woman climbed down, moving with efficient grace. She wore a simple traveling dress the color of sand, practical and worn from use. Her hair was dark brown, pulled back in a neat bun, and when she turned to face him, Oliver saw she was younger than he expected, maybe 25, with a serious expression and clear gray eyes. "Mr. Jenkins." She called. "That is me," Oliver said, walking closer, wiping his hands on his pants. "My name is Theresa Ramsey. I am here about the position." Her voice was steady, educated, not the rough accent of most women in these parts. Oliver studied her. She looked too refined for ranch life, too clean. You have experience with babies, I do. I was a nanny for a family in San Francisco for 3 years. Before that, I helped raise my younger siblings after my mother died. There were 5 of them. I know what I am doing. Why did you leave San Francisco? Oliver asked. It was a fair question. Women did not usually travel alone to the middle of the Nevada desert without reason. Theresa met his eyes without flinching. The family I worked for moved to Boston. They wanted me to go with them, but I have no desire to live back east. I prefer the West. I saw your advertisement in the paper and took the stagecoach here. Before Oliver could respond, a thin wail rose from inside the house, quickly joined by 2 more. Theresa's expression shifted, became almost hungry with purpose. "May I?" she asked, already moving toward the house. Oliver followed her inside. The 3 babies were in the large crib he had built, all of them red-faced and squalling. Theresa went directly to them, her hands sure and gentle as she picked up the nearest one. She examined him quickly, smelled his diaper, and said, "This one needs changing. The other 2 are hungry, unless I miss my guess." She was right. Oliver watched as she efficiently changed Benjamin with supplies from the shelf Catherine had organized, then settled into the rocking chair and prepared a bottle. Within minutes, she had Benjamin feeding peacefully while she spoke in low, soothing tones to Samuel and Matthew, promising them their turn would come. "You can start immediately if you want the job," Oliver said. Theresa looked up at him, the baby cradled expertly in her arms. "I would like to know the terms. You said room and board. What are the wages?" They negotiated for a few minutes. Oliver offered $20 a month, which was generous. Theresa accepted without haggling, which told him she needed the job more than she let on. They agreed she would have Sundays off after the morning feeding, that she would eat meals with the family, and that she would have the small bedroom off the kitchen that Oliver's mother-in-law had used when she visited. "I have one question," Theresa said as she switched Benjamin for Samuel. "Your wife, how long ago did she pass?" 4 weeks and 2 days, Oliver said, his throat tight. "I am very sorry. These babies are blessed to look so healthy despite such a loss." She paused, then added carefully, "I want you to know I am not here to replace her. I am here to help care for these children because they need it, nothing more." Oliver nodded, grateful she had said it plainly. "That is understood." Theresa moved into the ranch that afternoon. She had only 1 trunk and a carpet bag, which Pete helped carry inside. By evening, she had organized the nursery, washed and mended baby clothes, and prepared a simple dinner that Oliver ate mechanically while she fed the triplets in rotation. She worked with quiet efficiency, speaking only when necessary, and Oliver found himself able to return to ranch work for the first time in weeks. The days developed a rhythm. Oliver rose before dawn to tend the cattle and horses, check fences, direct his small crew of ranch hands. Theresa rose with the babies, who seemed to wake in shifts throughout the night. She kept the house clean, prepared meals, and devoted herself entirely to the triplets. Oliver would come in for dinner and find her reading to them from the Bible or singing soft songs. She had a pleasant voice, low and melodic. They spoke little at first. Oliver did not know what to say to this stranger living in his house, caring for his children. Theresa seemed content with silence, but slowly, over shared meals, they began to talk. "Where are you from originally?" Oliver asked one evening, 2 weeks after she arrived. "Pennsylvania. My father was a schoolteacher. He died when I was 18 and my mother followed 6 months later. I had to quit my own schooling to care for my siblings. That must have been hard. It was necessary." Theresa glanced at the babies sleeping in their basket near the table. "But I learned I was good with children. When my siblings were old enough to manage without me, I went to San Francisco to find work. I thought I might see something of the world. And did you?" A small smile crossed her face, the first he had seen. "Some. Enough to know I prefer open spaces to crowded cities." Oliver found himself curious about her. She was educated, well-spoken, yet she had chosen to come to one of the most isolated ranches in Nevada to care for triplets. Most women would have been intimidated by the work, but Theresa seemed to thrive on it. She never complained, never showed frustration even when all 3 babies cried at once or when Samuel developed colic and screamed for hours. One night, Oliver came in from a difficult day wrestling a bull into a new pasture to find Theresa pacing the floor with Samuel, her face drawn with exhaustion. The baby had been crying for 3 hours straight. "Let me take him," Oliver said. "I can manage," Theresa said, but her voice shook. "I know you can, but you have been managing all day. Let me help." He held out his arms, and after a moment, she passed Samuel over. The baby felt hot, his little face scrunched in misery. Oliver held him against his shoulder and walked the same path Theresa had been wearing into the floor. "What do you think is wrong? Colic. Some babies just get it. He will outgrow it, but until then all we can do is try to comfort him." Theresa sank into a chair. "I am sorry. I am supposed to handle this so you can rest. You are one person caring for 3 infants. No one expects you to be superhuman." Oliver patted Samuel's back, feeling the tiny body rigid with discomfort. Catherine was so excited about these babies. She never complained once during the pregnancy, even though carrying 3 made her sick as a dog. She used to talk about all the things she would teach them, all the places she would show them on the ranch. It was the first time he had spoken of Catherine to Theresa beyond the bare facts. Theresa looked at him with something like understanding in her tired eyes. "Tell me about her," she said quietly. So Oliver did. He talked about meeting Catherine at a church social in town 5 years ago, how she had been visiting an aunt and had decided to stay when they fell in love. He talked about their quiet wedding, the years of hoping for children, the joy when she finally became pregnant. He talked until Samuel's cries faded to whimpers and then to sleep, and when he finally fell silent, he realized Theresa had tears on her cheeks. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman," Theresa said. "She was. Your sons will know about her. I promise you that. I will make sure they know their mother loved them." Something in Oliver's chest loosened at those words. He looked at Theresa, really looked at her, and saw not just the efficient nanny he had hired, but a woman with her own griefs and strengths, someone who had chosen to pour her care into his fractured family. "Thank you," he said, and meant it more deeply than he could express. As spring turned to summer, the ranch came alive with new grass and wildflowers that dotted the desert in unexpected bursts of color. The triplets grew stronger, their personalities emerging. Samuel was serious and watchful. Matthew was the easy one, quick to smile. Benjamin was the troublemaker, always fighting sleep and demanding attention. Theresa learned to tell them apart instantly, while Oliver still sometimes had to check the small bracelets she had made to keep track. Oliver found himself noticing things about Theresa. The way she hummed while she worked. The way she always rose with patience no matter how many times the babies woke her. The way she had begun tending a small garden behind the house, coaxing vegetables from the reluctant soil. She never complained about the isolation or the hard work. She seemed genuinely happy. One Sunday, her day off, she asked if she might borrow a horse to ride into town for church services. Oliver offered to drive her in the wagon, and to his surprise, she accepted. They left the babies with Pete's wife, who had come to dote on the triplets, and made the 10-mile journey into Pahrump. The church was small and packed with people seeking relief from the heat. Oliver had not attended since Catherine's funeral, and he felt the eyes on him as he entered with Theresa. He knew what people would think, what they would whisper, the grieving widower and the young nanny. He almost turned around, but Theresa walked calmly to a pew and he followed. After the service, several women approached to coo over the mention of the babies and inspect Theresa with barely concealed curiosity. Theresa handled it gracefully, answering questions about the triplets' health and development while revealing nothing personal about herself or her position in Oliver's household. On the ride home, Oliver said, "I am sorry about that. People here like to gossip." "People everywhere like to gossip," Theresa said practically. "I am not concerned with what they think. It does not bother you, being out there alone on the ranch with me." Theresa turned to look at him directly. "Should it? You have been nothing but respectful. You are a grieving man trying to care for his children. I am helping you do that. Anyone who wants to make something unseemly out of that has a small mind and too much time." Oliver felt a rush of admiration for her straightforward honesty. "Still, I appreciate your understanding of the situation." "I understand grief, Mr. Jenkins. I understand loss. And I understand that those 3 babies need both of us right now. That is all that matters." But as the months passed, Oliver began to realize that what he felt for Theresa was shifting into something beyond gratitude. He noticed the way sunlight caught in her dark hair when she hung laundry. He looked forward to their quiet conversations over dinner. He felt a warmth in his chest when he came home to find her singing to the babies. It was not the same as what he had felt for Catherine. That had been young love, sweet and uncomplicated. This was something different, built on mutual respect and shared purpose, growing slowly like the plants in Theresa's garden. He did not know what to do with these feelings. Catherine had been gone only 6 months. It felt too soon, disrespectful somehow. And Theresa had made it clear she was there as an employee, nothing more. He tried to push the feelings down, but they grew stronger with each passing day. One evening in late August, a dust storm rolled in with violent speed. Oliver barely made it back to the house before the wind hit, carrying stinging sand that reduced visibility to nothing. Inside, Theresa had already shuttered the windows and lit lamps. The babies fussed at the strange darkness and the howling wind. "This will be a bad one," Oliver said, brushing sand from his hair. "We may be stuck inside for a while." They spent the evening together in the enforced intimacy of the storm-locked house. Oliver taught Theresa to play checkers while the babies slept. They talked about books they had read, places they had been. Theresa told him about her childhood, about her father's love of learning, and how she had once dreamed of being a teacher herself. "Why did you not pursue it?" Oliver asked. "Women teachers are expected to be unmarried." "And I always thought I would marry someday, have children of my own." She moved a checker piece, not meeting his eyes. "But that has not happened, so now I care for other people's children and try to be content with that." "You do not sound content." "I am grateful," Theresa corrected. "Gratitude and contentment are not quite the same thing." "No," Oliver agreed. "They are not." The storm lasted 3 days. By the time it cleared, Oliver felt as if something had shifted between them, though he could not name what. Theresa seemed more at ease around him, less formal. She laughed more, especially when the babies did something amusing. Once he caught her watching him with an expression he could not read, and when their eyes met, she looked away quickly, color rising in her cheeks. September brought cooler weather and roundup time. Oliver had to be away from the ranch for several days, camping out with his men to gather the cattle for sale. He hated leaving Theresa alone with the triplets, but she insisted she would be fine. "I have Pete checking on me daily, and the babies and I will manage perfectly well," she said. "You have a ranch to run. Go to your work." But Oliver found it hard to concentrate. He kept thinking about Theresa alone in the house, caring for three increasingly active 6-month-old boys. What if something happened? What if one of them got sick? What if she needed help? On the third night, one of his men came riding into camp. "Pete sent me," the man said. "Everything is fine, but Miss Ramsey asked if you might come back. She said it is not an emergency, but she would appreciate your presence." Oliver was on his horse before the man finished speaking. He rode through the dark, reaching the ranch just after midnight. The house was lit with lamplight. He burst through the door to find Theresa in the rocking chair with Samuel, who was coughing badly. The other two babies were crying in their beds. "I am sorry to call you back," Theresa said quickly. "I truly think he will be fine, but the cough has gotten worse, and I thought you should know." Oliver went to her, putting his hand on Samuel's hot forehead. The baby coughed again, a harsh barking sound. "How long has he been like this?" "Since this morning. I have been giving him water and keeping him upright. The doctor's book I have says steam helps, so I have been taking him into the kitchen near boiling water." She looked exhausted, her dress rumpled, her hair falling from its pins. And Oliver felt such a surge of emotion that it nearly staggered him. This woman, who was not Samuel's mother, who owed them nothing beyond her contracted duties, had spent the entire day nursing a sick baby and had only called for help because she wanted to do right by Oliver. "You did the right thing calling for me," he said. "Let me hold him. You should rest." "I cannot rest. The other two need feeding." But even as she said it, her eyes were closing with weariness. Oliver took Samuel gently. "Go lie down. Even if just for an hour, I will handle the others." "But you have been working. Theresa." He said her name firmly. It was the first time he had used her first name, and her eyes flew open. "Go rest. That is an order from your employer." A faint smile touched her lips. "When you put it that way." She went to her room, and Oliver spent the night caring for all three babies alone. It was exhausting and chaotic, and Samuel's cough did not improve much, but Oliver felt a strange peace beneath the worry. This was what mattered. These tiny lives depending on him. And Theresa, who had become so vital to their world, by morning, Samuel's fever had broken and his cough was looser. Theresa emerged from her room looking guilty but rested. She took one look at Oliver, disheveled and half asleep in the chair with a baby on each shoulder and one in his lap, and actually laughed. "You look like you have been through a war," she said. "Feels like it," Oliver admitted, "but I think we won." She came over and took Matthew and Benjamin, settling them in their crib. Then she reached for Samuel and her hand brushed Oliver's. They both froze. The touch was brief, innocent, but Oliver felt it like electricity. Theresa drew her hand back quickly. "I should start breakfast," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "Theresa, wait." Oliver stood, still holding Samuel. "I want to thank you for everything you do for us, for them. You are far more than just someone I hired." "What am I, then?" She asked it quietly, and there was something vulnerable in her expression that gave Oliver courage. "You are part of this family. Whether that was part of our agreement or not, it is the truth." Theresa's eyes filled with tears. "They feel like mine," she whispered. "I know they are not. I know they have a mother who loved them. But when I hold them, when I feed them and comfort them, they feel like mine." "Catherine would be grateful," Oliver said. "I know I am." They stood there in the early morning light, the baby between them, and Oliver felt the words rising in his throat. Words he was not ready to say, might never be ready to say. But they pressed against his silence, demanding acknowledgement. The months that followed were both joyful and agonizing. The triplets thrived, beginning to sit up and babble. Theresa taught them little games, sang them songs, read to them constantly. Oliver could not imagine life without her steady presence, her quiet competence, her gentle affection for his sons. But he was falling in love with her, and he did not know what to do about it. He caught himself watching her at odd moments. The concentration on her face as she mended tiny clothes. The way she closed her eyes when she drank her morning coffee, savoring it. The tenderness in her voice when she soothed a crying baby. He wanted to touch her, to hold her, to tell her everything he was feeling. But the fear of disrupting what they had, of losing her if she did not feel the same way, kept him silent. He thought he saw signs that she might feel something too. The way her breath caught sometimes when he stood close to her. The way she smiled at him over the babies' heads, small private smiles that made his heart race. Once, he came in from the cold and she automatically reached up to brush snow from his hair, then pulled back as if burned, murmuring an apology he did not want. December came, and with it the first heavy snow. The ranch was isolated, cut off from town for days at a time. It was just the 5 of them, Oliver and Theresa and the 3 babies, living in their own small world. Christmas approached, and Oliver asked Theresa what she might like as a gift. "I need nothing," she said. "I have everything I require." "Everyone wants something," Oliver pressed. She was quiet for a moment, watching the triplets play on a blanket by the fire. They were 9 months old now, trying to crawl, full of personality and life. "I want them to be happy," she said finally. "I want them to grow up knowing they are loved. That is all I want." Oliver went to town on one of the clear days and bought fabric for a new dress for Theresa, toys for the babies, and on impulse, a delicate silver locket. He had the jeweler in Pahrump engrave it with the initials of all 3 boys. Christmas Eve, after the babies were asleep, Oliver gave Theresa her gifts. She exclaimed over the fabric, then grew very still when she opened the small box with the locket. "Oliver, I cannot accept this. It is too much. It is not nearly enough. Open it." She did, and saw the tiny photographs he had paid a traveling photographer to take of each baby. Her hand flew to her mouth. "So you can carry them with you always," Oliver said, "like the mother you have become to them." Theresa looked up at him with streaming tears. "I am not their mother. You are the only mother they will know. You are the one who comforts them, teaches them, loves them. That makes you their mother in every way that matters. Oliver." His name was barely a whisper. "I should not." "Why not?" "Because I was hired to do a job." "Because your wife has only been gone 9 months. Because people will talk. Because I have no right to feel the things I feel." Oliver's heart stopped. "What things do you feel?" Theresa stood abruptly, the locket clutched in her hand. "I should not have said that. Please forget I did." "I will not forget." Oliver stood too, facing her across the small space. "Theresa, tell me what you feel." "I feel like I am betraying Catherine every day," Theresa said, the words tumbling out. "I feel like I am falling in love with her husband and her children, and I have no right to either. I feel like I want to stay here forever, not as an employee but as part of this family, and that is wrong because she was supposed to be here, not me. She was supposed to raise these babies and grow old with you, and instead she is gone and I am here, and I feel guilty for being glad about it." The last words came out as a sob. Theresa covered her face with her hands. Oliver crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her hands down, holding them in his own. "Look at me," he said. "Please look at me." She raised her tear-stained face. "I loved Catherine," Oliver said. "I will always love her. She was my wife and the mother of my children, and I will never forget her. But she is gone, and I am still here, and so are you. And these feelings I have for you, they are not a betrayal. They are proof that my heart is still capable of loving, even after loss. Catherine would not want me to be alone forever. She would not want her sons to grow up without a mother. She would be grateful that you are here, caring for them, caring for me. Oliver, I do not want you to feel obligated because I confessed my feelings." "Obligated?" Oliver almost laughed. "Theresa, I have been in love with you for months. I have been terrified to tell you because I thought you only saw me as your employer, thought you would be horrified, thought you would leave. You have." She searched his face, and he let her see everything he had been hiding. "Yes, completely. Desperately. I love the way you sing to the boys. I love the way you stand up to me when you think I am being stubborn. I love coming home and knowing you are here. I love who I am when I am with you." He drew a shaky breath. "I love you, Theresa. And if you feel even a fraction of that for me, I am asking you to let yourself love me back." Theresa stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and kissed him. It was tentative at first, questioning. Oliver answered by wrapping his arms around her and pulling her close, kissing her with all the longing he had been suppressing for months. Theresa made a small sound and melted against him, her arms coming up around his neck. The kiss deepened, turned urgent, became a promise of everything they had been afraid to want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theresa was crying again, but she was smiling too. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Then we will be terrified together," Oliver said, and kissed her again. They spent Christmas Day as a family, official in a way they had not been before. Oliver held Theresa's hand across the table. They exchanged glances full of meaning over the babies' heads. When Matthew took his first crawling steps that afternoon, they celebrated together, and Oliver thought his heart might burst with happiness. That evening, after the triplets were asleep, Oliver asked Theresa to marry him. They were sitting by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. He had been planning to wait to court her properly, but the words came out of their own accord. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is soon, I know people will talk, but I do not want to wait any more. I want you to be my wife. I want to make this family real and legal and permanent." Theresa sat up and turned to face him. "Oliver, are you certain? It has not even been a year since Catherine died." "I am certain. I will wait if you need me to. We can have a long engagement. But I need you to know that this is what I want. You are what I want for the rest of my life." Theresa touched his face, her fingers gentle on his rough cheek. "I want that too. Yes, yes, I will marry you." Oliver kissed her again, wondering how he had gotten so lucky twice in one lifetime. They decided to wait until spring for the wedding, partly for propriety's sake and partly to give Theresa time to prepare. She wrote to her siblings, who were scattered across California now, to tell them the news. Oliver told his ranch hands and the few friends he had in town. The reaction was mixed. Some people were happy for them. Others whispered about indecent haste and unseemly attachment. Oliver found he did not care. Winter passed in a blur of happiness. The triplets grew and changed daily. By February, all three were crawling, getting into everything, demanding constant attention. Theresa bloomed, her earlier seriousness giving way to joy. She laughed often, touched Oliver freely, kissed him whenever the babies were not looking. Oliver felt years younger, alive in a way he had not been since Catherine's death. One night, lying in bed after a particularly chaotic day in which Benjamin had learned to pull himself up on furniture and promptly fallen and screamed for an hour, Theresa said, "Do you think they will remember her at all?" "Catherine," Oliver considered. "No, they were too young. But they will know about her. We will tell them stories. We will show them her picture. She will be part of their history. And when they ask about me, when they want to know who I am, we will tell them the truth. That their mother died giving them life, and then another woman came who loved them so much she became their mother too. We will tell them they are blessed to have been loved by two mothers." Theresa was quiet for a moment, then said, "I would like more children. Someday. Is that selfish?" "When we already have three," Oliver pulled her closer. "It is not selfish. I would like that too, a brother or sister for the boys, children who are ours from the beginning." Yes, Theresa whispered. That is what I want. They were married on a warm day in April 1879, just over a year after Catherine's death. The ceremony was small, held at the ranch with only close friends and Theresa's brother, who traveled from Sacramento to give her away. Theresa wore a dress of pale blue that brought out her eyes. The triplets, 13 months old and wildly active, were held by ranch hands during the ceremony and proceeded to cause cheerful chaos throughout. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Oliver kissed Theresa in front of everyone, not caring what anyone thought. She was his wife now, legally and truly. The boys were hers. They were a family. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. They were learning to live together not as employer and employee but as partners. They disagreed sometimes, usually about ranch business or how to handle the boys' budding toddler tantrums. But they learned to talk through problems, to compromise, to respect each other's opinions. The physical side of their marriage was a revelation to both of them. Oliver had been with only Catherine before, and their intimacy had been gentle and somewhat inhibited. With Theresa, there was a passion and intensity that left them both breathless. She was not afraid to express her desires, and Oliver found himself learning new depths of love and connection. By their first anniversary, Theresa was pregnant. She told him one evening in May 1880, a small smile playing on her lips as they sat on the porch watching the triplets chase chickens in the yard. "I am going to have a baby." Oliver felt a jolt of joy mixed with terror. After losing Catherine to childbirth, the thought of Theresa going through the same thing made his blood run cold. "Are you certain?" "Yes, I am about 2 months along, I think. The baby should come in December." "I am scared," Oliver admitted. After Catherine, Theresa took his hand. "I know. But I am healthy and strong, and we will have the doctor here. Everything will be fine." But Oliver could not shake his fear. As Theresa's pregnancy progressed and her belly grew round, he found himself watching her constantly, checking on her, forbidding her to do anything remotely strenuous. Theresa tolerated it for a while, then finally lost patience. "Oliver, I am not made of glass. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am perfectly capable of managing." "Catherine was healthy too," Oliver said. "Until she was not." Theresa's face softened. She pulled him down to sit beside her, placing his hand on her moving belly. "Feel that. That is our baby, alive and strong. I will not leave you, I promise." "You cannot promise that." "No," she admitted, "but I believe it. I believe I will be here to raise all of our children, to grow old with you. You have to believe it too." Oliver tried. But when December came and Theresa's labor started, he was beside himself with fear. The doctor came from town and set up in the bedroom. Oliver was banished to pace the floor with Pete and the ranch hands, while the triplets, now 2.5 years old, were kept entertained by Pete's wife. The labor lasted 8 hours. Every cry from the bedroom made Oliver flinch. He prayed harder than he had ever prayed in his life. He made bargains with God. He promised things he would never keep. He just needed Theresa to live. He needed her to survive this. Finally, near midnight, he heard a new sound. A baby's cry, strong and healthy. The doctor emerged a few minutes later, smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Jenkins. You have a healthy son, and your wife is tired but doing very well." Oliver nearly collapsed with relief. He rushed into the bedroom to find Theresa propped up on pillows, looking exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny bundle. She looked up at him with tired eyes. "Come meet your son," she said. Oliver approached on shaking legs. The baby had a full head of dark hair and was already waving tiny fists in the air. He was perfect. Absolutely perfect. "He is beautiful," Oliver said, his voice choked. "We have 4 boys now," Theresa said with a little laugh. "Can you imagine the chaos?" Oliver sat on the bed beside her, putting his arm around both of them. What should we name him? They had discussed names but never settled on one. Theresa looked down at the baby, then said, "Thomas, after my father. Thomas Oliver Jenkins." "Thomas," Oliver repeated. "I like it. Hello, Thomas." The baby's eyes opened, unfocused but already curious about the world. Oliver felt his heart expand yet again, making room for this new little person. "You are amazing," he said to Theresa. "Thank you. Thank you for not leaving me. Thank you for this baby. Thank you for everything." Theresa leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for finding me, for giving me a family, for loving me." The triplets met their new brother the next morning and were fascinated and confused in equal measure. Samuel touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger and said, "Small." "Yes, he is small," Theresa agreed, "but he will grow just like you did. And you three are going to be his big brothers and help take care of him." "Okay," Matthew said agreeably. He was always the easy one. Benjamin looked suspicious, as if sensing this new person might take attention away from him. Oliver made a mental note to give Benjamin extra attention in the coming weeks. Life with 4 boys was chaotic in ways Oliver had never imagined. The triplets were into everything: climbing, running, getting into mischief constantly. Thomas was an easy baby, thank God, but he still required feeding and changing and attention. Theresa managed it all with extraordinary grace, though Oliver made sure to hire a girl from town to help with housework, so Theresa would not be overwhelmed. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Oliver watched his family with constant amazement. The boys all adored their mother, following Theresa around like ducklings. The triplets had no memory of anyone else raising them, and Thomas had known only Theresa from birth. To all of them, she was simply mother, the center of their world. When Thomas was 3 and the triplets were 5, Theresa became pregnant again. Oliver still felt fear, but it was less sharp this time. Theresa had come through Thomas's birth easily. She was careful with her health and had the doctor check on her regularly. This pregnancy seemed easier too, and Theresa carried the baby with confidence. In August of 1884, she gave birth to a daughter. Oliver wept when he held his baby girl for the first time. She was tiny and perfect, with wisps of red gold hair that must have come from some ancestor he did not know. Her eyes, when they finally opened, were the same gray as Theresa's. "Sarah," Theresa said, not asking but declaring. "Sarah Catherine Jenkins, after my mother and your first wife." Oliver looked at her in surprise. "You want to name her after Catherine? She should be honored. She gave us our 3 oldest boys, and I like the idea of her name living on in our family." Oliver loved Theresa even more for that generosity of spirit. "Sarah Catherine it is." The boys were delighted with their baby sister, though the triplets, now 5 years old and full of rough and tumble energy, had to be constantly reminded to be gentle. Thomas, at 3, was fascinated and wanted to hold her all the time. "My baby," he would say, reaching for her. "Our baby," Theresa would correct. "She belongs to all of us." Life settled into a new pattern. The ranch was thriving under Oliver's management, and he had expanded the herd and the property. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, able to provide well for their growing family. The boys started school, riding into town 3 days a week with the children of neighboring ranches. Sarah grew into a cheerful, active toddler who had her 4 older brothers wrapped around her tiny finger. Oliver could not remember ever being this happy. Even his grief over Catherine had mellowed into a gentle sadness, a sense of loss that no longer cut but simply existed as part of his history. He talked about her sometimes with the triplets, showing them the daguerreotype he had of her, telling them what little they might want to know. They listened politely, but without real understanding. She was a story to them, not a person. Theresa was their reality. One evening when Sarah was 2, Oliver found Theresa sitting on the porch watching the children play in the yard. The boys were teaching Sarah to chase fireflies in the twilight. Theresa had her hand on her stomach and Oliver felt a flash of recognition. "Again?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Again," she confirmed with a smile. "Are you pleased?" "I am always pleased." He put his hand over hers. "Though I am starting to worry we will run out of room in the house. We could add on. Build a bigger bedroom for the boys." They did add on over the winter, creating a large dormitory-style room where all 4 boys could sleep. The construction was finished just in time, because in April of 1887, Theresa gave birth to twins. 2 girls this time, identical down to the tiny birthmarks on their left ankles. Oliver stood looking at them in the cradle Theresa had used for all their babies and laughed until he cried. "7 children," he said. "We have 7 children." "You have experience with multiples," Theresa said from the bed, her voice tired but amused. They named the twins Emma and Lily. The household descended into cheerful chaos. Between the triplets, who were now 8 and developing distinct personalities and opinions about everything, Thomas at 6 who was quiet and thoughtful, Sarah at 2 who was wildly independent, and infant twins, the ranch house was never quiet. Oliver hired more help, both for the house and the ranch, and Theresa's days were full to bursting, but they were happy days. The family grew together, bound by love and shared work and the rhythms of ranch life. The triplets helped with cattle and horses as they grew older. Thomas showed an aptitude for numbers and began helping Oliver with the ranch books. Sarah declared she was going to be a cowgirl and insisted on learning to ride as soon as her legs were long enough. The twins were still babies, but already showing the same determined personality as their siblings. On their 10th wedding anniversary in April of 1889, Oliver took Theresa into town for a rare dinner alone. Pete and his wife watched the children, and Oliver and Theresa had an entire evening to themselves. Over steak and potatoes at the town's single restaurant, Oliver took Theresa's hand. "Do you ever regret it, answering that advertisement, ending up on a remote ranch with a grieving widower and infant triplets?" "Never," Theresa said without hesitation. "That advertisement was the best thing that ever happened to me. It brought me everything I ever wanted. A home, children, you." She smiled. "Though I will admit there are days when the noise level makes me want to hide in the barn." Oliver laughed. "I think about what my life would be like if you had not come. I would have been lost. The boys would have been lost. You saved all of us." "You saved me too," Theresa said seriously. "I was alone in the world, caring for other people's children, belonging nowhere. You gave me a place to belong, a family of my own. That is worth everything." They finished their meal and walked the quiet streets of Pahrump as the sun set over the desert. Oliver thought about the scared, desperate man he had been 11 years ago, holding 3 screaming infants and a crumbling heart. He thought about Theresa arriving like an answer to a prayer he had not known how to pray. He thought about all the moments between then and now, the slow building of love and trust and family. "I want to give you something," Oliver said, pulling a small, wrapped package from his pocket. Theresa opened it to find a beautiful ring, a single emerald surrounded by small diamonds. "Oliver, it is beautiful, but you already gave me a wedding ring. This is different. This is just because I love you, because you are the most extraordinary woman I have ever known. Because you took my broken family and made it whole." Theresa slipped the ring on her right hand, her eyes shining with tears. "I love you so much. You know that, do you not? I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." Oliver kissed her right there on Main Street, not caring who saw. "I know. And I love you just as much." They walked back to the wagon hand in hand, and Oliver felt a deep sense of contentment. His life had not turned out the way he expected. He had experienced terrible loss. But he had also found extraordinary love, twice in different ways. He had 7 children, a thriving ranch, and a wife who was his partner in every sense of the word. When they got home, the house was in its usual state of controlled chaos. The triplets were arguing about something. Thomas was trying to referee. Sarah was crying because Emma had pulled her hair, and Lily was screaming in sympathy. Pete's wife looked frazzled but relieved to see them. "They have been angels all night," she said, which was clearly a lie, and Oliver loved her for it. After Pete and his wife left, Oliver and Theresa worked together to settle all 7 children for the night. It took an hour, but finally everyone was in bed, the house was quiet, and they collapsed together on the sofa. 7 children, Theresa said, echoing Oliver's words from the twins' birth. "What were we thinking?" "We were thinking we wanted a big family," Oliver said. "Mission accomplished." Theresa laughed softly, then turned serious. "Are we done having children?" Oliver considered. Theresa was 36 now, and each pregnancy took a toll. The last birth with the twins had been harder than the others. "I think we have enough," he said carefully, "unless you want more." "I think 7 is a good number," Theresa agreed. "I can barely keep track as it is." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Theresa said, "Samuel asked me today if I was his real mother." Oliver tensed. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth. That a woman named Catherine gave birth to him and loved him very much, but that she died when he was very tiny. And that I came to take care of him and his brothers, and I loved him so much that I became his mother in every way except birth. I told him he was lucky because he had 2 mothers who loved him." "How did he take it?" He thought about it for a minute, then said okay and went back to playing. "I do not think it changed anything for him. I am still just mother." "You are," Oliver said. "You are their mother in every way that matters, all 7 of them. The triplets may not have come from your body, but they are yours as surely as the other 4. "That is how I feel," Theresa said. "Like all 7 are equally mine. Is that strange?" "Not at all. That is how I feel too. They are all ours, all part of this family we built together." The years continued to pass. The triplets grew into strong young men, learning the ranch business alongside Oliver. They were 18 in 1896, adults now, and Oliver trusted them with major responsibilities. Samuel was steady and reliable. Matthew was the charmer, good with people and negotiations. Benjamin was fearless and athletic, the best horseman of the 3. Thomas at 15 was more interested in books than cattle, and Oliver and Theresa discussed sending him to college in California. Sarah at 12 was a wild thing, riding the range with her brothers and refusing to be interested in traditionally feminine pursuits. The twins at 9 were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and often communicating without words. Oliver was 50 years old and feeling it in his joints and back. Theresa was 43 and still beautiful, though she had silver in her hair now and laugh lines around her eyes. They had been married 17 years, and Oliver loved her more with each passing day. One evening in October, Oliver came in from working with the triplets to find Theresa sitting at the kitchen table with a letter. She looked up at him with an unreadable expression. "What is it?" he asked. "My youngest brother wrote. He is getting married and wants me to come to the wedding in Sacramento." "That is wonderful. We can all go." "Oliver, I have not seen my siblings in almost 20 years, since before I came here. We have written letters, but they do not know me anymore. They do not know our children. I am a stranger to them." Oliver sat down beside her. "Then maybe it is time to change that. Let them meet the family you have built. Show them the life you have created. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I am not ashamed, I am just. It has been so long. They decided to make the trip, all 9 of them. It was a massive undertaking, traveling to California with 7 children ranging from 9 to 18, but they managed it. Theresa's siblings were stunned to meet her enormous brood, and Oliver could see them reassessing their sister, seeing her not as the girl who had left Pennsylvania to work as a nanny, but as a woman who had built an impressive life. At the wedding, one of Theresa's sisters pulled Oliver aside. "She seems happy," the sister said, watching Theresa laugh with the twins. "When she left San Francisco, I worried she was throwing her life away going to work for a stranger in the middle of nowhere, but I was wrong. She made my life," Oliver said simply. "I would have nothing without her." "She said the same about you," the sister said with a smile. They returned to Pahrump with stories and renewed connections, and life continued its steady forward march. The triplets began courting girls from town and neighboring ranches. Thomas left for college in 1898, breaking Theresa's heart even though she knew it was right for him. Sarah at 14 announced she wanted to be a veterinarian, which was nearly unheard of for a woman, but Theresa supported her daughter's ambitions fiercely. In 1899, Samuel got married to a sweet girl named Clara from a ranch 20 miles south. The wedding was held at the ranch, and Oliver stood with tears in his eyes as his oldest son exchanged vows. Samuel was 21, the same age Oliver had been when he met Catherine. It seemed impossible that the tiny screaming infant he had held the day his first wife died had grown into this confident young man. Matthew and Benjamin married within a year of each other, both choosing wives from town. Suddenly, the house felt too quiet with only 5 children at home. Thomas came back from college and got a job at the bank in Pahrump, putting his education to good use. Sarah went to study veterinary medicine in San Francisco, one of only a handful of women in her program. The twins, close as ever, both became teachers at the schoolhouse in town. By 1905, Oliver was 59 and Theresa was 52. They were grandparents several times over, with Samuel and Clara producing 3 children, Matthew and his wife having 2, and Benjamin and his wife expecting their first. The ranch house that had once been bursting with children was quiet most of the time, just the 2 of them rattling around in the space. One evening, sitting on the porch watching the sunset over the desert, Theresa said, "You miss it, when they were all small and home." "Sometimes," Oliver admitted, "but I also love this, just us. We have not had this much time alone since before you came. We have done well, have we not? Raising them all, we have done better than well. Look at them. Samuel is running his own ranch now. Matthew is talking about running for town council. Benjamin is the best horse breeder in the county. Thomas is making something of himself in business. Sarah is going to be a doctor for animals. Emma and Lily are teaching children to read. We created good people, Theresa. People who contribute to the world. We did, Theresa agreed. Together. Oliver reached for her hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "I have been thinking about something, about telling you something I have never said properly." "What is that?" "When Catherine died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would just exist, going through the motions for the sake of the babies. I never imagined I would find love again. And then you came, and at first you were just help, just someone to care for the children, but you became so much more. You became my best friend, my partner, my love. You gave me a second chance at life, at happiness. You gave my sons a mother and me more children than I ever dreamed of having. You made every day brighter. And I need you to know that if I had the choice of any life, any path, I would choose this one. The one that led to you." Theresa's eyes were wet with tears. "You gave me a home when I had none, a family when I was alone, purpose when I was drifting. You gave me children to love and a man to build a life with. You saw me not as just a servant, but as a person worthy of love. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Oliver Jenkins. Oliver pulled her close and kissed her forehead. We are lucky, you and I. We found each other when we both needed finding. They sat together as the sun dropped below the horizon and the stars came out, bright and clear in the desert sky. Oliver thought about the journey that had brought them here, all the joy and sorrow and love and loss. He thought about Catherine, who had given him his first family. He thought about Theresa, who had saved them all and built something new and beautiful from the ashes of grief. He thought about his 7 children, the 3 who had brought Theresa into his life and the 4 who had come from their love. 2 decades earlier, he had been a desperate man with 3 crying babies and a broken heart. Now he was a grandfather, a successful rancher, a man surrounded by family and love. All because a woman named Theresa Ramsey had answered an advertisement in a newspaper and come to a remote ranch to care for triplets. "Thank you," Oliver said quietly. "For what?" Theresa asked. "For coming, for staying, for loving us, for everything." Theresa leaned her head on his shoulder. "There is nowhere else I would rather be." They sat together in the darkness. 2 people who had found each other in the aftermath of tragedy and built something enduring. The ranch was quiet around them, the cattle settling for the night, the horses dozing in the barn. Somewhere in town, their children were living their lives, raising their own families, carrying forward the legacy of love that Oliver and Theresa had created. Oliver thought about mortality sometimes now. He was getting older, and while he was still healthy, he knew the years ahead were fewer than the years behind. But he felt no fear. Whatever time he had left, he would spend it with Theresa, watching their children and grandchildren grow, tending the land they loved. "You have any regrets?" Theresa asked, as if reading his thoughts. Oliver considered carefully. "I regret that Catherine died so young. I regret that my first 3 sons never knew their birth mother, but I do not regret anything else. Every choice, every mistake, every hard day, they all led me here. To you. To this family, to this life, so no, I have no regrets." "Neither do I," Theresa said. "Not a single one." They went inside eventually, banking the fire and checking the doors as they had done thousands of times before. In their bedroom, the room they had shared for over 20 years, they got ready for bed with the comfortable ease of long habit. Oliver watched Theresa brush her hair, the silver strands glinting in the lamplight, and felt the same surge of love he had felt 20 years earlier when he first realized his feelings for her. "I love you," he said, as he said every night. "I love you too," Theresa replied, as she always did. They lay together in the darkness, their bodies fitting together like puzzle pieces. Oliver listened to Theresa's breathing slow as she fell asleep, and he thought about all the nights they had shared, all the children they had comforted, all the dreams they had chased together. Life had not been what he expected. It had been loss and grief and struggle, but it had also been love and joy and triumph. It had been Theresa appearing when he needed her most, becoming first a helper, then a friend, then a lover, then a wife. It had been watching children grow and thrive, building a legacy that would outlast them both. Oliver closed his eyes and sent a silent thank you to whatever force had brought Theresa to his ranch on that hot day in 1878. Whether it was God or fate or simple chance, he was grateful. She had saved him. She had saved his sons. She had given them all a future. And as he drifted off to sleep next to the woman he loved, Oliver Jenkins knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges or joys the remaining years might bring, they would face it together. Just as they had faced everything else. As partners, as lovers, as two people who had found each other in the wilderness and built something beautiful from the ruins of loss. The ranch was quiet around them. The desert stretched vast and beautiful beyond the walls. And inside, two hearts beat in rhythm, bound by love and history and the life they had created together. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.